Hey everybody, I wanted to spend a little bit of time in week 5, at the beginning of week 5, giving you a little bit of background on one of the assignments. The assignment in particular is the Excel worksheet assessment. And so I mentioned at the beginning of the class how we're doing a couple of assessments that are kind of building on each other, but are still separate assessments in that they each have their own grade. Well, this is the second part. So you did one in Word using this Municipal Solid Waste Generation EPA report. This is the next one. So since we're moving into Excel, this one obviously is going to be in Excel. So I wanted to give you a little bit of information on maybe how to get started with this, just to make it a little easier as you jump into this. I know some of you were confused about a couple things with the Word portion of this EPA report. So I want to just kind of do a little bit of background. Hopefully that'll help. So what we have here, as you can see, is we've got the instructions and we've got this PDF. We're going to need both again. So when you open up the PDF, this is what it looks like. You remember it's the same one from the other assignment. And then we also have the instructions, which are right here. This is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be building a table, and it's going to be a table based on information from that PDF, from that EPA report. And then when the table's done, and you have some freedom as far as what kind of information goes into the table, but when the table's done, then we're going to develop some charts and graphs from that table. And then I think they're going to develop another table as well. What you're going to end up with is a spreadsheet that you're going to upload to Blackboard that has a number of different sheets in it. Okay, so you're going to keep all of this in the same spreadsheet. It's just going to have different elements or different sheets, and I'll show you how to do that. So we're going to look at these instructions here. The directions, it basically says, using the table from Table 2 from that report, you're going to create an Excel spreadsheet in Excel 2016, incorporating the required contents, etc., etc. So what are they talking about? Well, they're talking about Table 2 in this big PDF. This is Table 1 here. I think that's on page 6. And then we've got Table 2 right here on page 8. You're going to be taking information from this and putting it into an Excel spreadsheet. Now, this is where you have some freedom. You can choose which one of these things which of these elements are you going to put in there. It doesn't have to be the entire thing, but just a handful of them, okay? And so you're going to start to develop a table that looks like this, all right? It's a title, and then you're going to have 4 different columns, and then the data is going to go within those 4 columns. So what I did was I put this in Excel, and I'm going to show you how to start to format this so that it actually looks presentable, looks half decent. So here in Excel, I've typed in all the different bits of information there in terms of column headings, but it's all jumbled together. So what do I do? Well, the instructions tell you first, we want to merge and center the title itself. So in order to do that, I'm going to highlight the whole thing, go up to merge and center, and boom, it's now one big cell with the entire title in it. Well, these are a little tight as well. So what I want to do here is I don't really want to expand it out all the way because we're going to have these really huge wide columns. So instead, I'm going to highlight this and I'm going to go to what's called wrap text. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to wrap the text. It wraps it around for you. So it tries to fit it into the column based on the size. I'm going to do the same but the size of the column. So we've got this here. It still doesn't look very good. So now I'm going to start to kind of stretch it out a little bit. I'm going to stretch these out as well. And we see that we actually can go much farther than that just because we have this title here that is pretty long. So I'm going to bring it out even farther. Now you can play with this a little bit. I would recommend doing that, in fact. I would recommend playing with it a little bit more just to see. You can wrap the text. You can then center it if you want to kind of tighten it up a little bit. That's not a bad idea. So I'm just going to kind of play with it a little bit here. I'm going to center these things as well to make it look a little nicer. But again, you're going to have to navigate this as well. So you're going to want to play with this a little bit. Now, for sake of time, I'm just going to move into it. This is where you're going to start to list your products. Now, the instructions tell you here that starting in after you put in the titles there, you're going to start to look at Table 2, and you're going to start to put in some of these different kinds of information. And it basically says, you know, you can choose which ones you want. But for instance, things like steel or plastics or textiles, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to toss a couple of those in. I'm not going to put the number, I'm just going to make up the numbers for sake of time. So steel, textiles, plastics. This is kind of what you're going to end up doing. and then you're going to put in different, whatever the numbers show in that spreadsheet. And again, just for sake of time, I'm going to kind of add them together, or I'll just kind of come up with numbers kind of on the fly. So these are not accurate numbers. This is just for sake of time. What it will ask, again, is for you to do next is to actually have a total there, and I'd recommend putting in total or something. And then you're going to use the AutoSum feature. Now, you've been learning about the AutoSum feature, so I don't need to say much about this. Again, for sake of time, I'm just going to put these in, but they do want, the instructions do want you to have the AutoSum being used, okay? It says it right there, calculate the totals right there in step 4. So you're going to start to develop this. You're going to name it EPA recycling data, and you're going to save this workbook, okay? Now, that doesn't mean you're done. When you save it, you're going to start adding some sheets. So we add sheets, and that's going to allow us space, room, to start to develop these charts. So the first chart you're going to be doing is going to be highlighting column A and column D, and based on that, developing a 3D clustered column chart. Now again, I'm going to allow you to do this on your own. That's the whole point of this exercise. But just to show you, how do you actually go and highlight, say, 2 different ones at this, at the same time? You're going to hit the control button and then highlight that. And from there, you're going to be able to develop some sort of clustered column. And hopefully by now, you can feel pretty comfortable with doing this kind of stuff. So this is a clustered column chart. When I hit it, boom, there we go. We've got a chart. Now you're going to have to do more than that. Obviously, that's just kind of giving you this in a very, very brief nutshell, okay? But that's how you're going to start to develop this chart, or these charts, I should say. All right. I go back here, the first one is going to, and you're going to move this then. It says move the chart to a new sheet and title it 3D clustered column chart. And you can do that pretty easily. You have a sheet right there. And when you have the column, or the clustered column chart, you will have an option to move it to another location, and you're going to do that. Then you're going to have another chart. You're going to develop a new one. This one's called Total MSW Recovery by Material in 2012. All this data, this is what you're going to be using. And then you're going to create, from that worksheet, a pie chart, all right? And you're going to include the title and everything else, the appropriate data labels, et cetera, et cetera. So you're going to end up with a pie chart and a clustered column chart, a couple of these tables, and then in the end, you're going to have a documentation sheet that gives you some background, okay? When you're done with all of these are all saved in the same workbook, okay? So you're going to have multiple sheets in the same workbook, all of which are based on this EPA report. So you're not making up the numbers. And remember, I did this, but that was just to make it, to kind of save some time, just to kind of give you an understanding of what we're trying to do. You're going to be using this, this PDF to develop your tables, and from there to develop your charts, okay? That's what you're going to do. When you're finally done, this is what you're going to save, and then you're going to upload this to Blackboard. So I wanted just to give you a little bit of background here, because I know when you're dealing with multiple things at the same time, it can get a little confusing, okay? You've got a lot of balls that you're juggling in the air at the same time. So I wanted just to kind of give you a little bit of a primer, a little bit of a background to help kind of ease you into this assignment, and hopefully it will help. Now, as always, if you have any questions, if something is really kind of confusing you or worrying you about this, you know where to reach me. You can email me, you can call me, you can text me, whatever, and I'd be happy to help you out with it. But hopefully this little bit, 8 minutes or so, is going to help you to kind of get started on this assignment. Thanks, folks.